So guys, in January I did a series of videos relating to the top 30 heavyweights on the planet. If you like, it was a list with how I rank the top 30 guys out there. I did promise at the time I would review it 6 monthly and try and post an update every 6 months. I've had a few requests saying that that's been and gone, so here I am. I'm going to try and do it over 3 videos, maybe 30 to 20, 20 to 10 and 10 to 1. So just before I get into it briefly, what I'm looking at when I'm putting these fighters in order: credible wins on their resume, losses on their resume, and I think really I'm looking for the form, the hard form, the opponents they've been in with, the way they've performed against opponents, as opposed to just an eye test. So you're not going to see many 10-0 prospects who just smashed everyone up on this list. You're probably going to see people who I consider to be in the top 30 heavyweights based on something that they've actually gone out and done, which I think carries weight at a certain level. Now there's a few names of people who unfortunately didn't make the list. Obviously with 30 there's only so many guys you can include, 30 to be precise. So the likes of David Price, Dillian White, Andy Ruiz, they're not on the list, I'm afraid. Essentially those kind of guys, whilst they're on the periphery of the top 30, I didn't think had the solid form in terms of wins on their record to merit inclusion. So without further ado, let's get into it. At number 30, I've gone for Alexander Ustinov. Ustinov's a guy who's probably best known for the fight with Tyson Fury that never happened. Perhaps secondarily, his loss to Kubrat Pulev. He's got a very strong winning record. I think he's got 30 odd wins and 1 loss. And some of those wins have come there or thereabouts at the level to merit inclusion in the top 30. I guess most notably he beat David Tua. There's a few lesser wins on his resume: Travis Walker, Jason Gavern, and I just felt he just about deserved inclusion on the list based on that form. Next up he fights Luis Ortiz. A win there can catapult him straight into the very higher echelons of this list. So at number 10, Alexander Ustinov. At number 30, Alexander Ustinov. At number 29, I've gone for Robert Helenius. He's coming off a bad loss. It was a loss by knockout to Johan de Par. But previous to that, he did have some form that I thought merited him gaining inclusion in this list. He had the win, however controversial it was, over Derek Chisora. He had wins over Serhii Lajkovic. He beat Franz Rill, who was previously unbeaten. You know, these guys, Helenius, Ustinov, they were guys, it was a toss-up between those sort of guys and the Dillian Whites and David Prices of this world, but I just felt the wins on their records were strong enough to catapult them into the top 30. So 30 Ustinov, 29 I've gone Robert Helenius. At number 28, another guy who's coming off a loss, which is Amir Mansour. I know Mansour's in his 40s. I know he took a KO loss, or a stoppage loss certainly, to Dominic Breazeale last time out, but there were excuses there. He was beating Breazeale handily until he sustained an injury, and previous to that, again, some decent form. A win over Fred Cassie, again slightly controversial, and a draw with Gerard Washington, which isn't the worst form. Some other fringe bits of form on his record as well. Wins over Kelvin Price, wins over Maurice Harris. For me, enough to stick him in at number 28. At number 27, Hughie Fury, who didn't make the list last time but has made his way in. Fury's got some thereabouts form on his resume. He's missing the sort of grade A name, but he's got wins, and convincing wins over the likes of Fred Cassie, Andre Rudenko, Dominic Quinn. He's took care of business against that level of opposition in very, very, very convincing fashion. So I've included Hughie Fury on the list at number 27 for that reason. And at number 26, possibly this will get a few laughs, but 26 is Dominic Breazeale. I've had Amir Mansour on the list. I've got to have Breazeale a place or two above him. I know Breazeale is also coming off a pretty one-sided loss at the hands of Anthony Joshua. But fundamentally, the form in the book is the form in the book. And Breazeale's got a win over Amir Mansour. He's got a win over Fred Cassie. He's got some form which still merits him inclusion at the bottom end of the top 30. So I've got Dominic Breazeale in at number 26. Moving on, at number 25, I've got Eric Molina. Molina, again, possibly known for a credible loss to Deontay Wilder, possibly known for a loss to Chris Arreola. There's some decent form there. He's a guy who has a win over Thomas Ademic. You know, he's a faded force. He doesn't hit the top 30 these days because he's very much downhill. But, you know, Molina, I felt that knockout victory against a run of play over Thomas Ademic and his performance against Deontay Wilder, even though it was a loss, you know, I thought he gave Deontay Wilder more problems than a lot of the other Deontay Wilder opponents. And, you know, as a result, I think Eric Molina at number 25 definitely deserves inclusion. Number 24, Tony Thompson. And I almost didn't include Tony Thompson because I suspect he's retired. But I thought, you know, he's been active relatively recently against Luis Ortiz. You know, so as a result, I will include him. I know he's talked about retirement. He'll come off clearly if he has retired. But I thought, you know, the nature of this sport, people talk about retirement all the time, and, you know, you see them fighting again rapidly. So I'm going to go with Tony Thompson at number 24. Thompson's another guy who's a faded force. You know, he's got losses recently against the likes of Luis Ortiz, Carlos Takam, Malik Scott, but there's still some real decent form on his resume. You know, there's 2 wins over Odlaner Solis, another guy who misses out on the top 30 but is a credible opponent, and David Price, you know, who, yeah, again, is another guy who misses out on the top 30. And Thompson has been on the sort of, you know, the level of the, you know, the gatekeeper, if you like, for the last 5 or 6 years now. And I think he's still got something to offer. And the people who find him out tend to be very, very decent fighters. And for me, Thompson, with his form, with those wins over Solis and Price, still merits inclusion in the top 30. So I've got Tony Thompson at 24. And number 23, Gerald Washington. Guy I've been impressed with recently, actually. I understand last night he knocked Ray Ustin unconscious. I was actually more impressed by the fact he beat Eddie Chambers, who, you know, he's another guy who I'd probably have not in the top 30, but probably in the top 50. You know, I thought Eddie Chambers had a lot of skill, and I thought Eddie Chambers was very possibly going to beat Gerald Washington. But Washington won that fight. He's got some other decent form. He drew with Amir Mansour, as I say, stopped Ray Austin last night. And he's a guy who is becoming a contender in the heavyweight division. You know, we need to see him step it up again. We need to see him in another big fight. But I think the win over Eddie Chambers is a real step forward for him. So, yeah, I'm going to include him based on that. Number 22, Derek Chisora. Unfortunately, Derek Chisora is one of those fighters who's known as a high-level loser. You know, David Haye, Tyson Fury, Vitaly Klitschko, Kubrat Pulev. When he steps up to that sort of level, Derek Chisora does tend to get found out. But the level below that, he's an interesting fighter and he's still got something to offer. There was the controversial loss to Robert Helenius that could have gone either way, but there's also been wins over Malik Scott, wins over Kevin Johnson, wins over Edmund Gerber. You know, those are decent enough opposition in the context of today's heavyweight division to get yourself included in the top 30. His last fight against Kubrat Pulev definitely won convincingly on my card, but Chisora showed in that fight he's still got something left, and you know, potentially he could be taking on a sort of gatekeeper role himself in the heavyweight division. At number 21, Antonio Tarver. Now, I know Antonio Tarver has had some drug scandal, like several other heavyweights who will appear on this list later on. But the fact of the matter is, it's an unfortunate fact of the sport today that a lot of heavyweights have got some sort of drug scandal attached to their name. And the way I'm going to play it is that unless they're serving an active ban, I'm going to include them in the list. Otherwise, it's just going to get too complex. So, Antonio Tarver makes it at 21. Good draw with Steve Cunningham. Steve Cunningham I'd be having in and around the top 20 of the heavyweight division had he not decided to drop back down to cruiserweight. As such, I've excluded him from the list. But, you know, a good draw with Steve Cunningham. Prior to that, a win over Jonathan Banks, another guy who doesn't make the list, but is still, you know, there or thereabouts, or was when he was more of an active heavyweight. So, I've got Antonio Tarver at number 21. So, there's the first 10 for you guys. Just to reiterate, number 30, we've got Ustinov. 29, Helenius. 28, Mansour. 27, Hughie Fury. 26, Dominic Breazeale. 25, Eric Molina. 24, Tony Thompson. 23, Gerald Washington. 22, Derek Chisora. And 21, Antonio Tarver. Guys, really appreciate it if you hit the thumbs up button to like this video. Leave your comments below on any of the selections I've picked. Who have I missed out I should have included. Do subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be uploading the next part, fighter number 20 through to fighter number 11 very shortly. So if it's of interest, hit subscribe so you don't miss out on that. Thanks for watching.